full disclosure, the only reason I'm making this video is because I want to show off the art of the personas that I made. So skip to the end of the video if you don't think you're going to watch this whole thing. Please, I'm begging. Okay, so basically, like years ago at this point, I think like 2 or 3, definitely when I was still in college, I decided to outline a Persona fanfiction, knowing full well I would never actually write it because it would be like, I think literally 170 pages or 170 chapters. I mean, way more pages. But yeah, so basically I was really inspired by like Persona 4 and 2 especially. And yeah, so I want to talk about the fan fiction, even though I'm never actually going to make it, just so it's out there, and because I haven't slept in like an entire day, and I had my wisdom teeth taken out a bit ago. So yeah, okay. So basically, the story is structured like a modern Persona game. It only takes place over the course of 1 semester, and it takes place in a fictional town in the United States, specifically in Michigan somewhere. I don't live in Michigan, but it takes place in the fictional like suburb town of Finchwood. So it's not like Inaba, it's not like Port Island, but it's definitely not like Tokyo. It's like in the middle. So basically the story is focused on isolation and how exactly to go about helping others. That's like the main theme of the story. You already saw the title. Basically, like how I imagine it now is basically like all of the characters can switch personas, because I don't like the wild card. I wouldn't acknowledge the fact that the wild card is not being talked about, even though it's like generally very modern Persona. So it's like the spin-offs where the characters have like their main personas, but they can also have like sub personas at the same time. But it's called like the Broken Wild because originally like the protagonist like not having a full wild card but being like kind of there was going to be like a bigger part of the story, but I really don't like it, so I said no. Okay, so basically the main part of the story, like what everything focuses on, kind of like the TV world and people getting thrown in, basically some people are kidnapped by the Syrian god Shalash, who is being commanded by Foster, who is the school's principal. And yeah, there are going to be a lot of on-the-nose names in this, so if that's not your thing, sorry. But yeah, basically, the principal, Foster, of the school is, like, partially possessed by Hapat, possibly doing it, or, like, partially doing it of her own will, kind of like Adachi and Amano Sagiri, but, like, there's more of a conflict there. So, basically, Foster sees a lot of the kids at the high school as basically, like, tearing others down and holding them back from accomplishing, like, what they should, like, having bright futures, stuff like that. And so ultimately, she just decides that, like, those people, like, she doesn't want to kill them, you know, like, she cares about all of the students at her school, but not completely in the right way. So she's like, okay, I'll just have Shalash, like, kidnap them and basically take them to Solitude, which is basically, like, this ideal world where they can live exactly as they want, as guided by their shadow self. And, you know, they'll be able to have fun, but they won't, like, burden anybody else. And so it basically, like, just furthers their isolation. They're not actually being challenged. It's kind of like the whole Maruki thing. It's not, like, amazing writing, and I know that. And I know that if, like, this were an actual Persona game, I'd be like, that's fucking stupid. But it's called having fun, so I don't really give a shit. And yeah, so basically, the main characters figure out what's going on. They break into Solitude. I forgot exactly how. I'm pretty sure you just walk into Solitude. Like, basically, Solitude is like an alternate layer of reality rather than like a complete other thing, kind of like how the metaverse is, where when you're in the metaverse you, like, things are completely normal unless you're in a palace. Solitude is similar. It's like everything is very dreary, there isn't as much light, it's very, like, washed out color wise, but when you're in a specific person's area of Solitude, it's much more colorful and, like, vibrant, and the area can be warped and stuff like that. So yeah, there you go. And you're about to see character Sims that I made in The Sims 4, because I love making characters of mine in The Sims 4, even though I don't actually play it. But I also made these characters years ago, so they might not look that good. I'm not going to edit them. So basically, Act 1 of the story is Skylar. Her main element is wind. That's why she has that name. And, oh yeah, something I forgot to, or it's going to be mentioned later. So I'll just save it for there, because I made this presentation. Yeah, okay. Basically, Skylar moves to Finchwood, the suburb or whatever of Michigan, and, like, her dad moves there for business, I'm pretty sure, and single father, so already some, like, baggage there. And Skylar is basically this very like aimless 16-year-old girl, because she goes like at the whim of like whatever is like going on around her, whatever seems like the right idea at the time. She doesn't really have any long-term goals or anything like that, right? And basically that is partially a product of her father having to move around so much, so she was never really able to establish herself or friends or anything like that. And basically when she is on the car ride, that's like the first chapter, she gets like glimpses of the Velvet Room, and she basically wakes up, and Igor is not in the story. It's like a spinoff. And instead, there's like this old burly like captain sailor guy named Croker, who was named after one of the first people to review Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And the reason why I did that is because I'm not going to use like a Frankenstein character. This is like a fan fiction, something that I made because I clearly love Persona. Meanwhile, Croker reviewed Frankenstein, so it's similar. So that's that name basis. And Croker is like this very like more comic relief, but he can be like deadly serious when he needs to be. But I imagine he's very showy, and he talks like this, and he's like very encouraging, but kind of in a tough love way, but he's also really fucking stupid. And basically Skylar's Velvet Room is a ship that is lost at sea in not the middle of a storm, but like it's dark out, because Skylar doesn't have like really bad depression or anxiety or anything. She's just like really aimless, you know what I mean? And so she's in like this very crowded captain's quarter of like this really small ship, or like there's one room in the ship, and that's what the Velvet Room is, because it's it's very compact, and she's lost. And he's basically like, okay, so your persona ability is kind of weird, and it's going to like influence other people to like have this weird persona ability, like, oh my god, the broken wild. And she gives Taylor this he gives Taylor this tarot reading where he draws, I believe, I forgot what the first card is, I'm not gonna lie, but he draws Temperance because that is Taylor's card. Because, like, she's not the Fool. I don't like assigning people with the Fool because I feel like it's lazy. And we haven't had a playable Temperance character yet. So she's the protagonist. Her Arcana is Temperance. And the next... Oh, I'm pretty sure the first card is the Hanged Man. I'm just going to say that's what it is, because the Hanged Man basically represents, like, a delay. And it's, like, willful. And that works because, like, Taylor is completely fine with how things are. Like, she would like a purpose, but she's not like deeply yearning or anything like that. And so this is Croker's way of basically calling her out for not being active enough when it comes to her own life. So then he draws Temperance, which basically shows that she's going to need to like moderate herself and do better about that kind of thing in the future, test things before diving into them. So like, don't be like completely like 180ing your personality. You should still like be yourself, but also like you need to get out there. So be temperate. And the next card he draws is Death, which is to signify change, and naturally it puts Skylar a little bit on edge. And if I keep saying Taylor, that's because one of the other characters is named that, I'm sorry. But yeah, so that happens, and basically Taylor wakes up in her own pocket of solitude, because like immediately, like that doesn't really fit with the principle, but like that's the version of the story that I had most recently. So basically, like I could say like maybe the principal like knew what was going on, or maybe like Shalash was acting out of turn, because like Shalash is still a god, so maybe Shalash was like, oh my god, there's a new student, I should like look at Skylar, and then immediately she's like, oh, she's fucked up, and then kidnaps her. That could be the explanation, but whatever. Okay, so Skylar wakes up in her like new house for the very first time, and it's like really dreary. She's an hour early, or like an hour before school starts, she's woken up. But like her alarm hasn't gone off, even though it should have. She kind of just woke up because of her Velvet Room dream. And she goes downstairs. Her father's already at work, so she's home alone. They don't have any pets or anything. Again, single mom. Mom died. She goes into the kitchen. She gets her backpack, and then her shadow self is like, I don't know if you want to do that. And she's basically like, no, like that weird blue guy was right. I really do need to like put more effort into my life and everything. And also in the first chapter, like her father mentions she does like playing card tricks, because her weapon in battle is like throwing playing cards, because I thought that was like a cute idea for a Persona protagonist. So she like takes her cards, takes her bags, and basically like it's a typical shadow confrontation. And her shadow like uses wind magic to like knock her against like some countertop on her in the kitchen, and so like she falls to the ground, and like her like cards go flying like all across the room too, and it's like really embarrassing. And Taylor basically like rebukes her. She's like, no, I'm leaving. I can't just like keep down like do whatever, like I can't just stay down and do whatever I'm told. And she ends up like flicking the cards and like onto her shadow self and like knocking her on the ground with like this like amazing trick or whatever. And ultimately she awakens to her persona, which is Hitchhiker, as in the urban legend of the wandering hitchhiker who tells her story to people before completely vanishing. And she ends up like using Garu or Zond or whatever to finish her off, and her shadow self, again, it just disappears because she's defeated it. So then she hasn't defeated it, but you know what I mean. So she goes to school, and then she encounters Ishir and Anna Maria, or just with her friends Anna, and basically, or Anna, I don't know. So basically, she runs into Foster like as soon as she gets to Finchwood High, or that's the principal, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm like so glad you're here. We have assemblies, like whatever." Because basically, like over the story, assemblies would happen just so like Foster actually exists in the narrative, even though she would like pretty obviously be like the obvious persona antagonist twist villain who isn't actually a twist. So basically, Ishir, he's like this very big like people pleaser guy, and so he immediately is like, "Oh my god, Skylar, you should sit with us." And Anna Maria is like very much like a lot colder, and she's like pretty standoffish, but she has to leave school early that day anyway for like a doctor's appointment or like to pick up something for her mom. I don't know, but she's going to the mall either way. And so basically like Skylar and Ashir like talk to each other, blah blah blah. First social link happens, but we'll get to that later. And yeah, so basically the next day in school, Anna Maria isn't there. So they're like, that's kind of weird. But okay, I mean, I was planning on going to the mall anyway. So they go to the mall, and it's in Solitude, right? And the only reason why they find that out is because Skylar is a Persona user at this point. So she's able to interact with it. So Ishir is like, "What do you mean? The mall is like completely normal." And so basically, Skylar like ends up like taking him into Solitude with them. But they find out this is also Ishir's pocket of solitude. So his shadow comes in, and he's basically all like, I forgot exactly like what he says, if I'm being honest, but Ashir is basically like a people pleaser who just wants like Anna Marie and all of his friends to be like safe, but also like unchallenged because he's like really afraid of that kind of thing. I'm not one of those people who believes that like people pleasers are just like actually really narcissistic or anything. Also, like that's an asshole thing to say anyway, but you know, it's like, you know, he also needs to be doing more, and it's okay to burden your friends. That's kind of the whole point of the story, hence the theme of isolation and like how to help people and reach out and everything. Sometimes you have to challenge them, and that's ultimately what Ishir ends up telling his shadow self. So he awakens his persona. They come back the next day in typical persona fashion, and then they save Anna Maria, who is very shy, and she's like, "Yeah, I should come out of my shell." And they basically decide to form the Saviors of Solitude, which is what the party is called in the story. And so they're like, okay, we need to be on the lookout, like actively, to make sure that everybody is okay in our school, so we can stop this from happening again. So that transitions into Act 3. So, and these okay, like, I know these sims kind of look, but okay. So the next arc is basically, I think, Skylar's dad, like, mentions, like, seeing one of the students, like, go somewhere, and then he doesn't show up to school till the next day. So then they run into Chris. And Chris is basically this, I think they have like a weird encounter, kind of like Yusuke in Persona 5, where they like where he like makes them uncomfortable, or something like that. So they don't like first meet him at this point, but basically like they go to like this art shop that has been like closed down, and they go in, and it's like Chris's pocket of solitude, and he basically finds out that this was like his like safe place, like really fun, nice, awesome. It's basically like what made him fall into art, because basically Chris is this photographer, so I can do like Persona 2 my mono references with this character, but basically like he got his start by doing like painting and stuff in this like now closed down art place in this strip mall. And it's like a strip mall store, so it's a one-day dungeon. It's basically just a boss fight, and they're out of there. And the reason why is because Chris is the navigator, because I want a male navigator. You'll learn their arcana and their specific personas and everything later. But yeah, so basically Chris is also, I feel like in terms of my personality, he's probably the most like me. But basically he's the navigator because he's very much in tune with the messages that like fictional stories and his art especially produce. And he's very in tune with like how people interpret different things, and that basically manifests in his persona being navigational rather than combat focused, right? So he's basically like, okay, so I found this one place the next day, like when he, or like at some point when he gets back to school and he like is better with his persona abilities, he's like, I was scanning with my persona and I found this one very weird pocket of solitude that we should go to, which they call the Soul of Solitude, which is basically the Mementos dungeon, where it's like, it's basically this forest, like around where Chris lives specifically, by his like condo or like cul-de-sac or like wherever he lives, you know what I mean? It's just like this big thick forest that not a lot of people go to, that is like very unusual in the sense that it's like active with shadows, even though it's in solitude, even though nobody is like actually there, like nobody's shadow self is manifesting it. So they're like, okay, we could go like train here and investigate a little bit. So then basically then the next character is Drake. And Drake is like this Barbie Ken doll looking ass, like football guy at their school. And he's not like a star player or anything, but you know, he's like a really good player in the school. And he has like not a lot of like other sporty friends or anything like that, which I think Chris picks up on, because Chris is, again, like he's a navigator, and also Chris and Drake are very like, they're artistic people. So Chris is like, okay, something weird is going on with Drake. So basically, they go to the gym in town, and they see that, like, okay, so Drake is in solitude, and yeah, so we need to break him out. By the way, like, Chris's whole revelation was basically, like, he needs to be more confident, like, putting his art out there instead of just, like, holding up in solitude, right? Okay, so Drake's whole thing is that he doesn't actually like playing football, shocker. But like he still likes working out and toning his body and everything. And the reason why he feels safe in solitude in the gym specifically is because when he's in the gym, he's doing what everybody expects of him. And so he isn't getting shit for not doing that. And so he basically tells his shadow self, like, no, I should be more bold and like stop just eating shit from other people willingly. So Drake awakens, and that really opens up the other party members. So basically, Drake opens up to Skylar, establishing the social link with them, and then that's when Skylar meets characters who are going to be relevant in a bit, Izumi and Daniel, because basically Drake, Izumi, and Daniel are part of like this friend group, and they start like hanging out in events so that like the last two party members are not in like typical Haru fashion, like barely focused on or anything like that. So there's some more bonding scenes, and Ishir is also close to Taylor, like they're classmates, and Ishir probably has a crush on her, but that's basically it. And so either way, like Ishir notices that Taylor has been a bit off, but like also before this, Taylor has like reached out to Skylar being like, hey, so we have like these mutual friends, let's hang out and everything. And Taylor she is like the bad bitch of this story, basically. She's like, she doesn't take shit from anyone. She's kind of like if Chie and Naoto, like both in terms of their character and in terms of their like persona, like powers, like had a baby, basically. Like she is, yeah. So, but they notice like she's been a little off, and she works like part-time at a church, or like a funeral home, actually, which is like weird, and that's something that she gets like judged for. And so it's kind of a similar thing, but the thing is she genuinely likes her job, and she doesn't like the fact that she's being judged for it. But again, I'll get to that later when we get to the social links, and my throat's already hurting, so this is going to be a great video. But yeah, so they go to the church, and she basically is like, you know what? Yeah, like I've been kind of like really withdrawn from people in spite of my like really outgoing personality and everything, and that's really not fair to the people around me. You know, like if I get judged, then that's actually not a problem I have to deal with. It's a problem they have to deal with by not like having to fuck with me anymore. So that shadow confrontation happens. But the thing is, when they break free of Taylor's shadow self, Shalash breaks in, like the one who's been kidnapping them the whole time. Like basically the monster breaks in, because at this point she's like, okay, this is like the 50th time that someone has fucked up my plans. And so they basically end up fighting Shishat, or Shalash. Sorry, I'm getting the fucking gods mixed up in this story. Sorry to the ancient Syrians out there. And so the party kills Shalash. It's basically like the Shadow Teddy like surprise fight, but more difficult. And not to say Shadow Teddy is not difficult, but you know. So anyway, so they kill Shishat, and she's basically like, now I can't protect my children, I'm so sorry. And the main characters are like, okay, so I guess that's it then. All right. I mean, good game. And it's like, obviously, it's one of those Persona moments where it's like, that's obviously not the final boss, but the characters don't know that until that is one of the next days in school, when the main characters, like, they all greet each other outside of the school gates, or not the gates, because it's in the United States, but, they meet each other, and then they walk into school, and immediately things are wrong. The atmosphere is wrong, and they can't the thing is, they can't even go to school, because when they walk in, and they're Persona users, it's in solitude. Like, they can't change which layer of reality they're in. They're like, okay, so we do have to deal with this. Not like we wouldn't anyway, but solitude is back, and we never actually failed in getting rid of it. So what's going on? And they basically find out very quickly, because of Skylar and because of Drake at this point, that Izumi is the one responsible. And Izumi, I think, had like 1 or 2 social link events at this point. But Izumi is like this very depressed, very like quiet, and, shy person in general. They're also non-binary. They use they, them pronouns. The story is woke. Sorry if that triggers you or whatever. But that was cringe. I'm sorry. But yeah, okay. So anyway, so Izumi, that's their thing. And yeah, so basically the reason why Izumi feels so safe at school is because their friends are at school. Right? Like, Izumi only has really, like, they don't have any extracurricular activities, anything like outside of school that's going for them. They don't like hang out with their friends that often, and in fact, because Skylar is there now, they kind of feel as though it's like they're intruding or whatever. But like, when they're at school and they're just like having lunch with their friends, or like in their classes that are peaceful, it feels like solitude. And this is also foreshadowing, because Shalash is dead, right? So Foster, the principal, like, basically just uses the one place that she has control over in real life to basically manipulate solitude to, like, still try to accomplish her goals at this point. So basically that happens, and Daniel, like, tries to save Izumi, like, before the party finds out what's going on, because, like, Daniel and Izumi, it's kind of like the mall, where this is both solitude to them, because Daniel's whole thing is that he is, like, really afraid of graduation. Like, Drake, Izumi, and Daniel, I'm pretty sure, are all seniors. Izumi might be a junior, but either way, they're, like, 1 year away from graduation, and Daniel is really afraid of that, because he doesn't want to lose touch with his friends. And yeah, so basically that's that. And he's, like, excited for college, and, like, he knows logically he'll make more friends there, but he's still really worried about it. So basically, Daniel, like, he doesn't die, but, like, he sacrifices himself to save Izumi from their shadows. And so Izumi, like, basically as soon as the party enters the school dungeon, because they show up later, they're basically like, oh no, Izumi, what's going on? And then they're like, oh my god, like, we need to save Daniel, blah, blah, blah. So then they do that, and then, like, basically they rescue Daniel, and Drake specifically awakens to his ultimate persona when, like, saving Daniel, basically, because the ultimate personas and the prime personas, because there are 2 stages here, but I'll get into that later, they awaken as part of the main story. Like, the prime personas specifically are what Skylar and the party member gets when Skylar finishes their social link, but the ultimate persona is, like, the final step that they take themselves on their own, fitting with the story's messages. So basically, Daniel is saved and the school is cleansed, and then they're like, well, we basically just were tardy for an entire day of school. That's really awkward, and now, like, some of us don't even have our backpacks. That's really embarrassing. So that happens, and then they basically find out, I'm pretty sure, after this point, they basically go to the Soul of Solitude, because they're like, all right, no more fucking around. We need to figure out what's going on if solitude is not, like, going away. And they basically pinpoint the location of they basically pinpoint where exactly Foster lives. Like, they dox Foster because they're like, okay, so Chris with, okay, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Okay, so they go to the Soul of Solitude. Chris is like, okay, you guys need to defend me while I, like, hack the planet with my persona. And then Chris finds out that there's, like, a lot of accumulated energy that wasn't there before, so don't, like, roast me for not being able to detect it earlier. Chris is like, that's basically what Chris says. And they basically find out where Foster lives. All they know is that it's this, like, a big house that has, like, a lot of energy. So they're like, okay, well, it makes sense. Like, this stuff is going on in this town, right? Obviously, like, they're going to live here, whoever's responsible. But obviously, like, they break in. They're not, like, illegally or anything technically, because, again, like, they're breaking into the Solitude version. But, you know, they basically do just walk into someone's house and break in, which is not a good look, but, you know, that's what they do. And they find out when they're inside that it's Foster's house. And so they end up encountering Foster, and they basically fight her as Hippat, the Assyrian god or goddess. And then she's basically like, I'm just trying to like protect humanity, like blah blah blah. She goes into her whole spiel that I basically already told you guys. And then after that, and she's not a persona user, by the way, like Adachi was. So it's not a 2-part fight. They just fight possessed Foster Hippat, and that's what happens. And so she's basically like, I'm really sorry, I was wrong. Like, I can't believe now that I see you guys and how well you've been working together and helping each other out, that, you know, that actually, like, solitude is not the answer. You actually do have to, like, burden your friends, and it's okay to do that, and I see that now. You're not actually dragging people down, you're raising them up, right? But the thing is, like, I'm not the only person responsible. I don't know who else is responsible. But if anything, I think they'll reach out to you, and maybe, like, that soul of solitude that you guys detected me in, like, actually has some more, like, hidden depths that you guys haven't seen yet. And I would probably workshop that if I were to write the story now, because I don't really like that. Maybe I'm not remembering it. It's, like, actually better. Or maybe it's, like... or maybe, like, something different is going. I don't know. But basically, like, that's what she says. And so the characters, like, basically decide to go back. Or actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to rewrite it on the fly right now. So basically, the heroes are like, okay, well, let's go back to the Soul of Solitude. And then they find, like, Skylar's father is there. And because this was, like, already a plan. So basically, they go back to Skylar's house after, like, investigating the Soul of Solitude and not being able to find anything. And basically, they just want, like, a celebration at this point. So they all go back to Skylar's house, and they find that Skylar's father is the possessed one now. Because basically, like, he's been a social link this entire time. And, like, also, he only feels safe in Skylar's home. So it's, like, another solitude going on. And so they can have, like, the double whammy of hoping to, like, basically ambush the leader specifically and, like, pick her off when she's alone, but she's not alone. And so they, like, fuck up Hadad, or no, not Hadad, whoever the fuck turns into, no, it's Hippat. Yeah, it is Hadad. I'm sorry. Okay, so they kill Hadad, and that's, like, very meaningful because Skylar's ultimate persona is the demonized version of him, but again, we'll get that later. And so Skylar's dad is basically like, oh my god, I can't believe you guys were doing all that shit, like, behind my back. That's crazy. And your principal was involved. That's crazy. I'm going to order you guys hella pizza. So then they party out, and basically, like, Hadad at the end is like, I'll open the way to my father, like, sons of man, I'm so impressed by you. You guys are awesome. So then it's like, you know, the end game, and then they have one final week. And that last week is when Skylar goes around the town talking to all of the social links that she's completed, and getting, like, bonuses from them and, like, unlocking fusions and stuff like that. And this was prompted by Croker, because the whole party is like, okay, let's just kick his ass tomorrow when we're fully rested. And basically Croker, like, interrupts in Skylar's, like, velvet room, and he's like, you need to go around listening to what the true hearts of humanity want. And so basically Skylar, like, does that. They have, like, a little nice week of relaxing and maxing out their, like, stats and everything. And yeah, so it's that kind of thing. And then they kill Dagon or Dagon, I don't know how to pronounce it, but basically it's like one of the Assyrian top dogs, the father of Baal and Hippat, and I think the husband of Shalash. I'm so sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. I should know that. But yeah, so it's one big fucked up family from ancient Assyria, and they get their asses whooped by a bunch of teenagers, as is Persona tradition. So now I'm going to be going in just a very brief summary. I know that was really long, but I really hope that the two people watching this are enjoying, because I'm having a lot of fun just, like, recounting, because I love making stories. So basically, like, really quick, on the right side of the screen, you can see basically how I would describe the tarot cards appearing in Skylar's vision for the first time when she establishes the social links. These are based on the Prisma Visions tarot deck, specifically. I'll put a link for it in the description if anybody is interested in tarot, but it is my second favorite deck now, and the first is the Dark Tarot. I'll also put a link in the description because I just gave it a shout out, but yeah, these are not original descriptions. Like, I wrote them, but they're based on cards that actually do exist in real life. But the Prisma Visions is a very vivid tarot deck that it's very introspective, and I think it fit the story very well, and I really like it. So there you go. So basically, I don't think I need to explain this social link very much. You know, they're the saviors of solitude. They just grow in size. They grow closer to each other. Basically, whenever, like, a new person gets recruited, it ranks up, for the most part. But the social links in this story only have 5 ranks to them, which is based on a Persona fanfic that I read that I really liked called the Persona the Sogawa Files, I believe, which was written by Mighty Garchomp or something like that. Shout out to her. Yeah. So Chris is the navigator and also the magician. So it says he tries finding more sources of inspiration. Basically, his whole struggle is he is a very passionate person, but the thing is, a lot of people don't really analyze, like, fiction or, like, even simple things like, you know, paintings or, like, you know, just any type of art, basically. And so Skylar basically gets him to go into this, like, art exhibition at the high school, and he ends up doing it, and he ends up, like, really resonating with people in ways that he didn't even intend on or expect. And that ends up making him become, like, much more confident in his work. And, you know, he knows a lot of people are not going to even try to interpret anything, but those are not the people who he should be making art for. It's himself and the people who will truly give it their all. The High Priestess is one of the few social links that would be completely mandatory to start. And I know Salem Winters is like, what a name. But yeah, okay, so basically, Skylar, I'm pretty sure after Anna Maria gets rescued, Skylar is like, okay, so we need to, like, gear up, okay? Like, we're fighting these magic beings. You know, this is not going to end well if we're not prepared. It's either that or right after Ishir awakens and they're, like, resting right before they get Anna. So basically she goes and, like, looks at one of the strip malls around town that she hasn't explored yet, and she comes across this, like, occult metaphysical supply shop type place, and she's like, hey, I kind of just found out magic is real. I need help. Like, she basically just says that, right? Like, it's kind of goofy. It's like, it would be played for laughs if it were actually written, but, you know, Salem being, like, an actual magic person is like, okay, like, shit, like, what do you need? You know what I mean? And so she ends up, like, getting, like, this nice discount. She's, like, a really nice woman. And, like, obviously Skylar is, like, the protagonist of the story, so she's going to be, like, doing all the equipment shopping and everything. And basically Salem learns to not take things as seriously as she should, or, like, not take things as seriously because she's taking them too seriously. Like, basically she is used to being judged by people who think that magic is complete bullshit and who think that, like, her, like, crystal tarot reading stuff are, like, just scams and stuff like that. And, you know, I do think a lot of the times they are, but most people in my experience who run the shops like that are genuine people who are also used to being judged. And the High Priestess is all about, like, intuition and, like, removing blockages and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, Salem learns that at the end of the day, like, by being so easily hurt and feeling so easily judged by people who could just be making observations at the end of the day, she's actually driving people away and not helping them. So that's what she learns. She connects with herself better, and she thanks Skylar for helping her see that. And the Empress is actually more of a late game thing, because I did make, like, a whole schedule. But yeah, so the Empress is basically this teacher, I believe an English teacher. It's not listed here, but yeah, she's an English teacher based on an actual one that I had in high school. Basically, her whole thing is that she's, like, pretty disorganized, and she's trying to be, like, the cool teacher and everything. But at the end of the day, like, her students just, like, aren't really connecting with her, and it's because she's trying too hard. And so Skylar basically helps her, like, get out of her shell by, like, attending this study hall type of thing, like, after school, that, like, basically nobody is showing up to. So, like, she and Skylar have, like, this really nice conversation one-on-one that, like, normally would be awkward to have in front of other people, but nobody else is there. And basically, like, she realizes by talking to Skylar that, you know, actually, like, I'm not trying hard when I talk to you, because I've already, like, kind of given up on, like, being super cool. I've just been being myself. And she ends up throwing or, like, helping organize this, like, other event or something. Either that, or it's kind of like she just, like, opens up and, like, starts telling stories that she would normally only tell in private to, like, her entire class, and she becomes more popular based on that, right? And so that way she's, like, really able to provide for, as an Empress does, her students. The next one, this is the worst name, Abel King. I'm sorry, but I had to do that. Okay, so basically the Emperor finds out that his mother is cheating on his father. Basically, like, Skylar and he get grouped up together for this, like, presentation or whatever. And he's like, hey, if you want to, like, work on this together, then, like, yeah, we can do that at, like, the school library, not my house. And Skylar's like, okay, sure. And then it, like, ends up taking longer than they expected. And I remember, like, writing this as an optional social link, but, like, okay, that should be required if it's, like, a school project. But, because Skylar is not a flake, for sure. So, anyway, it, like, ends up taking longer than they expected. And Skylar is like, I don't really know if it would be a good idea for, like, to go to like my house, or like, you know, she says something like that, or maybe he's like, that your house is like too far away, or I don't have a car or something, so you can just like come to my house if that's okay. And she's like, all right, sure. And basically like he ends up opening up that like, actually, like I just found out recently that my mother is cheating on my father, so I don't really want to like do anything like at home more than I need to, but you know, I'm kind of glad that you're here because I've been like avoiding it or whatever. And Skylar, and this is just like during like a normal like, we don't have anything else to talk about because like we're done with her presentation type of conversation. It's not like he just brings it up like trauma dumping or whatever. Like it is trauma dumping, but you know, it's like, it's high school. So that happens, and then Skylar is like, oh shit, like you should do something about that. Like you should tell your father. Like he has to know, basically. And so he does that, and ultimately the father finds out that like, or basically like Abel finds out that like he is also cheating. Like they're both cheating on each other, and then he like ends up confronting both of his parents, and he finds out that they've actually been keeping it from him, but they've been separated for a while, seeing other people. It's not like a cheating situation, like their relationship's over, they've just been trying to stick together. And so Abel is basically like, okay, well, that's good, I guess, but like you should have told me, like we could have worked through this together. Like I don't want to be like, I don't want you guys to feel like you're in like eggshells around me, like, you know, I was prepared to like disown like one of my fucking parents or whatever. And basically they like agree to like move forward together as a family, not keep things from people, for like, you know, like literally the greater good, like improving things for everyone, as the Emperor does. And yeah, like Abel is also like very upfront about people, that kind of thing. And the Hierophant is obviously Skylar's father, and he doesn't really have a character arc or anything. It's more just like Skylar tells him what's been going on, and he's like really proud of her, and it's basically like a check for her to understand how far she's come, because you know, in real life people don't really notice how much they're changing, but having someone who you've known for so long, especially a family member, like be able to comment on those changes definitely does help. And it's also important to keep in mind, like, again, all of the Ultimate and Prime Persona Awakenings, or the Ultimate Persona Awakenings, are the characters doing it to themselves. And basically, like, Skylar's Prime Awakening, she doesn't have a social link with herself. So it's just based on, like, a part of the story where I thought it, like, I don't remember exactly when, but, like, it's a part of the story where it makes sense for her to, like, do more reflecting. I think it's actually after one of Foster's assemblies, where she's like, you know what, actually, yeah, that is, like, an important lesson to learn. And so she gets her Prime Persona, and then her ultimate persona is something similar, but I don't remember exactly what. And but yeah, it doesn't really matter either way. But yeah, maybe it's related to the Hierophant, maybe it's just like a random event. But also, I did that intentionally when I was making the outline for the story, because a lot of the, like, you know, Ultimate Persona Awakenings don't exist in real life, for example. Like, growth is not linear, you don't ever stop developing as a person. And so having Skylar's Awakenings, like, purposely seeming like mostly apropos of nothing, or just like kind of being like they could be placed anywhere, that was also something that I intentionally did. But yeah, okay, so The Lovers is from Lewis. Basically, he's just this guy who plays water polo, I think, and he's not a love interest for Skylar. Basically, he like finds out, or like they just like run into each other after school at some point, and or like maybe he needs help with something, so Skylar needs to like get her social stats up before she can actually do it. But basically, like he ends up just like ranting to her because he's just like, you know, a guy in high school, and he's like, oh my god, like I'm like really annoyed by my parents right now because like they really want me to like pick a college already, because I've already been pretty late with that kind of thing. And sending my applications in, but I just kind of want to do like coaching or whatever, and I don't need like a college degree for that. And Skylar's being like, oh, are you sure? Like, you know, it could be a good idea to go to college, but at the end of the day, like, yeah, it is your decision and everything. And she can like tell how passionate he is and everything. And so, you know, ultimately he just decides to like disappoint his family by choosing his own destiny, that kind of thing. Not that complicated. Now Taylor, the next party member social link, is the Chariot. Basically, her whole thing, as I alluded to before, is she works like part-time for now at this funeral home, and she's always really liked death and like more macabre stuff like that, and she's also always been judged for it. Not by her family, who is still supportive, but like, you know, whenever she talks about like what she's doing after school, or like whenever like people like try to be friends with her, they're kind of like weirded out or turned off or anything, especially because she's so young, and a lot of the people who like would normally be supportive of it are like judging her as if she like must be unqualified when like she has the job, she's good at it, she knows she's good at it, that kind of thing. And she basically ends up finding the motivation because someone who's actually related to a different social link dies, and she ends up like getting called up on like short notice to like do the funeral and everything. And she ends up realizing, like, again, kind of similar to Chris, like, this is who she's doing it for, the other people don't really matter. And she also like, she apologizes to Skylar for like wasting her time like venting when it was like really obvious the entire time, which is something like I have done with my friends before. But yeah, and then Skylar is obviously like, girl, shut up, it's fine, I got that free social link XP. So Ana Maria Rivera is, her entire name is a pun on her persona, but I'll get to that later. So basically, her social link is the Strength Arcana, because again, like, it's difficult for her to open up, but she eventually like comes out of her shell more, and yeah, I mean, that's really it. It's a pretty basic social link, but the thing is, her social link is the only one that Skylar ends up messing up by reversing it temporarily. Specifically, they're like hanging out, and it's their first time, like Skylar and Anna hanging out outside of school together, and Skylar is and Anna is like, oh my gosh, like, I kind of like have come like a long way even in just like a few weeks at this point. And so like, thanks for hanging out with me. And Skylar says something that is like supposed to be nice. She basically says something along the lines of, oh yeah, if I'm being honest, like, I didn't really see all that much of you when we first met, but I'm really glad that I'm wrong, because you're a really cool person. Or I really didn't like think much of you when we first met. And so Ana Maria like naturally gets like upset by that, and Skylar is like, oh no, I meant it as a compliment, like, I'm so sorry, like, oh my god, that actually was really disrespectful. And basically Ana Maria ends up being like, I have to go somewhere actually, and the social link gets reversed. And I think that is also like, during the nighttime, she like talks to her father about it or something, and she's like, Dad, I really messed up. So that happens, and then, but ultimately, like Skylar ends up texting Ana Maria a few days later, being like, I'm really sorry for what happened, like, that was really disrespectful. And Anna says, actually, I'm more disappointed in myself for how I reacted. Let's talk in school tomorrow. I'm really sorry too. And so that's when their social link writes itself, and then that next day when they talk, it's the third rank of the social link, I believe. So that is an interesting part of it. There you go. So the Hermit is from Dolores, and she basically is, I wanted to write like some kind of queer story because it, like, you know, it takes place in a high school, it's a Persona game, infamously not great with that kind of thing. So basically, she is a lesbian who wants to start a pride organization at the school because there isn't one, and she basically ends up, I think like Skylar sees like a poster on the wall, and she's like, well, I kind of feel like I might be asexual, so and hence why Skylar doesn't really have a romantic interest. So she's like, okay, well, if there's like this pride thing, I should check that out. Why not? Also, I don't have a Hermit social link yet, so maybe. So she shows up, and Dolores, and she finds out that like it's actually not like a pride group, it's just like something that's like gauging interest in one. So she talks to Dolores, who like, you know, set the whole thing up, and she's like, hey, like, we should actually like do this, like, it would be really good for the school and everything. And she's like, oh, I don't know. And, you know, she kind of like breaks her out of her shell, and then like Dolores opens up about how like she's closeted from her family, and this would be like a really good way to like get more support, especially because like there are probably a lot of other like queer people at the school in similar situations that are a lot like hers, you know, that kind of thing. So that's really all that is there. And obviously the last social link is it like actually becoming an organization. And like, I feel like during the last week of the story, during like the like rank 11 events, but actually rank 6 in this story, it's like the first Pride meeting. And so like the final rank, like the final actual rank for the social link is just like them getting confirmation that it will start in the future, but like for now, for a few months, we just need to like get some clerical things set first, you know, that kind of thing. So the Wheel of Fortune is basically, it's the weirdest one. I'm not really confident in this one, if I'm gonna be honest, but basically Skylar and her father like go out to eat because her father wants to like treat her to a meal, basically. And so basically it's like this really like badly managed and badly organized like hibachi grill place. And so Mingyu is basically their server, and he's like, I'm really sorry for the delays. And Skylar is like, my social link detection is beeping really badly right now, so I'm going to go back to this place when I can. And so she does, and she finds out that Mingyu is basically the son of the person who, I'm sorry. Originally she was a guy, but I changed her gender with another Social Link character, just so there would be like a bit more diversity in like the type of stories by gender. That was years ago. I'm surprised I remember that. But yeah, basically, so Mingyu is basically the daughter of the person in charge of this restaurant, who basically spent like his entire like life savings opening it, because it's like his dream to run a hibachi grill place. But like nobody else in the family really supports him in doing that. Everybody else, like, you know, it's not like holding on to a lot of like his workers or anything. They're not getting a lot of business, and they're also like competing with a very similar place elsewhere in the town that is better. So like Mingyu knows this business is not going to last long, but she wants to stay around so that she can support her father. And there's also some like crack starting to show as the Social Link goes on, I imagine, where Mingyu's father is like, oh, you should quit too, like, and Mingyu is like, no, like, this is not a burden for me, like, I want to be there for you, kind of thing. And Skylar is basically there, like, helping her basically just like vent about how difficult it is, and also like how at the end of the day, like, Mingyu is also really upset at her father for just like fucking up his entire like fortune when that could be used to help the family or other people in other ways, that kind of thing. I thought it was like an interesting thing to like highlight the wheel of fortune and the ups and downs in life and stuff like that, and how sometimes they're intentional, sometimes you can see them coming, sometimes you choose to take the L for the greater good in the future, that kind of thing. So then Ishir is justice. Basically, he's a people pleaser. He feels responsible for everyone, like that's the right thing to do. Like, him putting his burdens onto other people is a bad thing, you know what I mean? And basically, one of the things that makes him realize that kind of thing is flawed is because of how Skylar reversed Anna's Social Link. Basically, he only finds out about that once they've already made up. And so Ishir, like, tells Skylar during their Social Link, like, yeah, I had no idea that happened, but it kind of, like, goes to show that, like, my friends are capable, like, they can handle themselves, too. That kind of thing. And so, yeah, not really important to go over too much. Then Arturo Aguilar, this is the person who used to be, like, a woman who got switched with Mingyu. But yeah, so Arturo is basically, his father is on his deathbed, and his father is actually the person who dies for Taylor's Social Link. And yeah, so basically, like, his father is on his deathbed, but his father was also, like, not abusive in the sense that he was, like, he ever, like, beat him or, like, insulted him or anything, but he just, like, he wasn't a good father. Like, he never felt guided by him. He never felt like he could really, like, listen to him. He was, like, provided for, but only, like, physically, not really emotionally or anything like that. But it wasn't, like, bad enough on the surface for, like, his other family members or anybody else to really get it. And so, like, his father's on his deathbed, like, he's supposed to be, like, the morning sun, Jesus Christ, not like, you know what I mean. Yeah, he's mourning, and he's a son, and he's, like, supposed to be seen that way, but he doesn't really care. He doesn't actually give a fuck that his father is dying. Like, and he kind of feels guilty about that. Like, you know, even if he did have an abusive father, like, maybe he should feel some guilt. And Skylar is like, honestly, like, no, that's completely okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, like, even if he was, like, a great father, like, not mourning someone doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person or anything like that. And basically, his father ends up dying, and it's, like, much more sudden than they even thought. And Arturo, like, goes to the funeral and has, like, a nice time, and he's, like, glad that he was able to, like, be there for his father. Or, like, he's glad that he didn't, like, blow up he's not glad that he was there for his father because of his father, but because of his other family members who he's still, like, upset at, but he hopes, but he basically comes to terms with the fact that, like, the other people in his family will never see his father in the same way Arturo is, but he still, like, is happy that he didn't, like, cause a scene or anything like that, and that he was still, like, there for his father in that sense, because, like, taking the high road is not, like, always the best thing to do or anything, but at the end of the day, he would have been causing drama when he didn't need to, and that's just no more. It's not more trouble than it's worth, or it is more trouble than it's worth. Hence the Hanged Man, him, like, willingly sacrificing in a way by not acting. Right? I know I just, like, rambled a million times there, but yeah. Didn't cause any problem. He basically didn't do anything but, like, vent to Skylar the entire time and be, like, kind of upset about the situation, but also, like, grateful for how he acted, or rather how he didn't act. And he's also the weapons like dealer. Basically, he works at a shop in the mall that sells weapons to Skylar, which is like illegal because she's 16 years old, but they probably figure out some kind of deal. Like, I'll bring you these artifacts from Solitude. I mean, this weird place, and you'll like give me stuff above, like below the counter or whatever. Yeah, so that's that. And so Death is Yukta Varadkar, I believe. So basically, Skylar takes a babysitting role, or a babysitting job, for these busy parents, and she is she's just starting middle school. But the thing is, her friend is moving away, so she has to deal with that transition, or that death in her life. And she's like a really nice girl, not like in the same way like Nanako is or whatever, but you know, she's like this really bright, cheerful girl. But like all of a sudden, I imagine like she just breaks down crying, and she's really upset. Like maybe they're watching something together, like she and Skylar, and she's basically like, it, like, you know, the thing that they're watching like hits too close to home for her. And Skylar basically ends up like seeing her a few more times and then like encouraging her. And Skylar like opens up about her own recent experiences, basically being like, oh yeah, like I had no idea what was going to happen, but I have like so much more friends now that like I've moved. So like not only will you make more friends in the future, but like you don't have to worry about your friend having to make new friends where she's moving. Like if I can do it, anybody can. And the last social link event, like the rank 5, not the rank 6, is basically Skylar having to double babysit because Yukta has also brought a friend over and they're having a sleepover. So that's very cute. And Temperance is also Skylar's tarot card, as I've said, so this is real recognizing real. Basically, Skylar like hangs out. It would probably be one of those things, like if it were a game, it would be like, do you want to spend the day online building the social stat? But once you do it, you actually start a social link too. Basically, I don't have like a specific game in mind, but basically Skylar is playing some kind of MMO, and she runs into this character whose name is Claironette. Because basically, Dorothy is this old woman. She is the grandmother of a girl named Claire, but she is pretending to, like, be Claire. She's not using her account or anything, but basically, like, every detail she tells Skylar about her life at first actually is true of Claire. And I think Claironette is, like, a very grandmother-esque username. So basically, like, they become online friends, and then Claire opens up that, like, she's actually Dorothy, she's actually this, like, old woman, and they end up starting to talk on Discord, or, like, that's where they start talking, like, right before the coming clean happens. It's probably because, like, Dorothy doesn't feel comfortable using Claire's name, like, on Discord. So, like, you know, Skylar notices, like, oh, she has a different username, and then Dorothy's like, yeah, that's not my actual name. You know, that kind of thing. And basically, she ends up really appreciating Skylar for not judging her or anything, and she's really glad that even though she's really old, she's able to like spread her wings online. And I think that fits Temperance very well, because you're not set in your ways, you're still testing things out and so on. And I think that's really sweet. This would probably be one of my favorite social links. And so now we have Izumi the Devil, and I know what you're thinking, like, oh my god, isn't Izumi like this depressed person or whatever? Yeah, but the thing is, the devil can be interpreted as someone who is very charming or someone who is restricted, and it can represent liberation as well. And usually when it represents someone charming, it's like in the context of someone who is appearing that way to manipulate you. But the thing is, Izumi believes that they are an unworthy and manipulative person, and they're someone who needs liberation, hence the devil. And so there you go. Izumi, the first time they hang out, it's like with Drake and Daniel. It's like, you know, they're like a group of 4. Drake is trying to open up because he just joined the team, but he's only hanging out with Skylar right now. Basically, Izumi is just like feeling really uncomfortable, but slowly they start to hang out like more and more, like one-on-one. And Izumi basically gets like some tough love from Skylar at some point, where she's basically like, Izumi, you are so much more than you think you are. That kind of thing. And yeah, so again, very generic in terms of like this story's messages. Like, you're not a burden, like you're actually a really cool person. And I feel like Izumi, oh yeah, like there's also a specific moment where Izumi like opens up about urban legends, and this is before their personal awakening. So Skylar is like, oh, do you know about the hitchhiker or our other party member personas? And Izumi's like, oh yeah. And so it's kind of like this example of them being able to see how much like they really do have in common, just because they're being open about themselves, right? And then when they awaken to their persona, the next social link event is them being like, oh my god, like that is such a fun coincidence, oh my gosh. So then we have Elijah Hope. Bad last name, I would change that if I were like remaking these characters. Basically, Elijah is like this 20-something who just got the job Specifically, he's teaching like an elective at their high school. I think graphic design is what I chose specifically because I had that class and it was really fun. And also the teacher who I had for that class was kind of weird. In a good way, though. He was really cool. But yeah, so as Elijah, basically, he is very overwhelmed by being a teacher. It's not at all what he thought it was cracked up to be. He feel like he just wasted his entire education and all this money, and now he has debt for nothing. And Skylar basically ends up like really helping him out, which at first is like very awkward, and it makes him feel even worse that he's being supported by someone who his job is to support. But ultimately, he kind of realizes like, no, this like is still what I want to do. I just need to like very much reassess how I'm actually doing it. And maybe I should also like change to a different school instead. I don't remember exactly what the resolution was, if I'm being honest, but I kind of like the idea of him deciding to go to another school, like one that's much more focused on graphic design specifically, because maybe he feels like he's not being like valued as much because it's just an elective in the specific part of the, like in the specific school. So he basically decides like, you know, after this one school year, because I don't want to leave, like I want to like build up my resume just a bit more, prove that I can do this. I'm going to transfer to a more like graphic design focused place. You know what I mean? Or maybe like one of the colleges or something where like most people who are taking the class will actually care about it, that kind of thing. Because the tower is about like it's about an upheaval or a major upset or disaster that cannot be averted, or if it can, it's still like going to happen in some kind of way. It's like very difficult to see coming, but from every rubble you can rise. So there you go. And then finally we have, or not finally, but we have Taylor, who is, oh no, I forgot, oh no. Okay, I forgot to change his name, but this is Drake Social Link, the star. Okay, whatever, sorry the presentation is not perfect. But yeah, so basically Drake's Social Link is, like I said, he doesn't actually like being a football player, and so basically he like sticks on the team for a little bit, but he basically like opens up to Skylar and he's like, yeah, kind of like, I wish I could be more like Chris, who's so open about his art, because I really like writing. But my parents are like, you're never going to get a scholarship. It's like that kind of really basic, like a Disney Channel shit. But basically he just decides he's going to, like, if Chris can put himself out there, he can too. And they kind of have like a friendly, like bro rivalry. And he ends up like quitting, which is very inconvenient for his team. And a lot of his, like, I imagine during one of his last Social Link events, like someone from his team would like be really upset and Skylar would have to tell him off. But also like Drake would mostly do it to show like his character development. Because, like, Skylar is not that confrontational. She'd probably just be like, hey, leave him alone. And then Drake would be like, yeah, leave me alone, blah, blah, blah. That kind of thing. But, yeah, and basically he realizes, like, you know, obviously, like, getting to college and being successful would be easier if he sticked with sports, but it wouldn't be his success. It would be the success that other people placed on him and that he would simply benefit from. And it's better to be it's better to be hated for who you are than judged for who you are not. And that's like a quote that I think a famous person said that he could actually quote if I wanted to be cheesy. But yeah, okay, so then we have the moon, and this is one that I think that I would like kind of really enjoy actually, because I think toxic positivity is a very interesting topic. Basically, Skylar feels like going for a walk to like upper social stats a bit, and I didn't actually like figure out what the social stats for Skylar would be, if any. I kind of just like wrote. But yeah, basically, theoretically, one of Skylar's social stats would involve her going around to this forest preserve. And so eventually she runs into Cordelia. And you have to remember, this takes place during the first semester of Skylar's sophomore year. So it is like getting colder as the story progresses. So she's probably like all bundled up and everything. And Skylar is like only in her jacket. And so she's like, oh my god, you should like button up. It's such a beautiful day out though. Oh my god, I bet you're like freezing. And basically, like, you know, they run into each other like every single time Skylar shows up in typical Persona fashion. And basically Skylar ends up learning that Cordelia is not very comfortable like focusing on the negative. Like maybe Skylar like vents to her a little bit. Like she puts her on the other end of like how social links usually go. And Cordelia like keeps turning the focus back to like something positive. And so like the next time Skylar kind of like snaps at her a bit, like not in like an overly rude way, because Skylar is a pretty passive person for the most part. She kind of just like encourages action in other people and like by proxy does it herself. Like she is active, but you know, she needs like other people to do it too. Or at least like to feel good about doing it. But basically like Skylar is like, she kind of tough loves her a bit, and she's like, okay, but like that's bad, right? Like I don't know what they would be talking about. Like maybe Cordelia's opening up about something bad that happened in her personal life, and kind of like peeved by the last conversation they have, Skylar is like, okay, but you were upset, right? Like that's not cool. And then Cordelia kind of like finally starts to open up about how like when she was growing up, her parents would always tell her that she's just being like this selfish, like miserable person no matter what. And so she basically decided like, you know, I don't want to be miserable. Like happiness is a choice, that kind of thing. And she basically realizes that that is not correct, and hence the moon, and the moon is linked to the shadow self, etc., etc. So then we have the sun, and I feel like this one would be like one of the least favorites too, but I also kind of like it, even though I can't really relate to it. Basically, Brianna is this senior in high school, so she's 2 years older than Skylar. She has like a full ride scholarship because of some things that she did in the past, probably like anti-drug work, because when I was in high school, like I met a specific person who had like 1 million free rides to a bunch of different colleges because she did like some like seemingly very basic anti like drug PSA type stuff. So Brianna basically went through the exact same thing. And so like a lot of people are like really jealous of her. She's like a straight A, like AP honor roll type student. But Brianna basically is like, she's very healthy about it all. She's like, you know, when I get to college, I'm going to be the freshman now. I'm basically going to be at like level 0. Like, just because I have some free rides doesn't really make me different from anybody else in terms of, like, how much I deserve to be there, that kind of thing. It just kind of sucks that I'm being, like, judged by people, and, like, I can't even really open up to my friends. And specifically, they meet on, like, another social stat training type of thing. Like, Skylar is, like, out on a run. So I feel like Skylar's social stats would be, like, peace, like, going for a walk, like, she has like a peaceful, or like tranquility it could be called, like she has a peaceful state of mind. And then it could be like her body getting trained, like her fitness or whatever, or I guess like her proficiency if we're going, but I don't know, I like fitness. And then whatever the other like social link stat that I thought of is I don't know, I guess it could just be like knowledge or something like that, because that's in basically every game. So yeah, so Brianna basically like opens up to Skylar, like they're out running together, or like they run into each other when they're on a run, and they decide to like do it together because like, hey, like working out is better when you do it with someone else, that kind of thing. And I don't know, they just have like a really nice like relationship where they're on the same page with one another. Like Brianna does not really need help or anything, and I feel like that is also a nice type of person to represent through a social link. Like, you know, a lot of the time, like when I'm venting to my friends, like I don't actually need like help or anything. Like I know how the situation is. It's just nice to have like a shoulder to cry on or whatever, you know what I mean? And that's basically what Skylar is, right? And so finally we have Judgment, which is Daniel. And basically Daniel's whole thing, it's pretty similar to Brianna, actually. Basically he's excited for college, but the thing is, and I did mention this earlier, I know, but he feels like when he gets to college, he's like, it's going to be very difficult for him to keep in touch with his friends, but he still likes his friends, so even if he'll make new ones, he's kind of like worried that they like won't live up to them or anything. He's not really he's just not really confident in like being able to carry parts of his life over. Like he doesn't know like how easy studying is going to be or anything like that. Like he's just generally not confident about transition, and hence the Judgment tarot card, which is all about the climax of the Fool's journey. Like he's at the end, the next thing is going to be a new beginning, right? And he's just worried about like having to take that final step, which he has to because it's just getting older, but he's not really confident in it. And basically like over the course of the story, with all of his friends and everything, and being the last party member, he realizes, yeah, actually, like these people aren't going anywhere. I just have to apply that effort and keep in touch. And at the end of the day, all relationships require effort. Sometimes things happen that make them require a bit more. And finally, we have Croker, the Velvet Room attendant who represents the world. Basically, Croker learns more about himself because he's not really a fish out of water. He's a really stupid person, but he's also very knowledgeable. It's not like Theodore in like Persona 3 Portable or anything, but basically he basically Skylar ends up lying and constantly saying that this is my grandfather, and he was in the Navy, basically. And he runs into like all of the party members with her over the course of the story and everything. So like one time they go to the mall and they run into Ishir and Anna. The next time they go to the school and they run into like a few other people and so on, right? And so Skylar basically just ends up having those little fun interactions and that kind of thing. And yeah, so I think the next thing are the personas, and I do have damage affinities. I did come up with like skill sets. I'm not showing the full skill sets or anything, but basically these are Skylar's. This is Skylar's initial persona. But first I should break down. So every character has an initial persona, a prime persona, which is an upgraded form of the first one. Those are in Persona 2 and 3, and arguably 5 Royal and 4 Golden as like the third tiers. But in this story, they are the second tiers, basically. So again, when you complete a social link, you get a prime persona. When the character, after their social link is completed, comes to a certain realization, they, on their own, get their ultimate, right? So basically, the Hitchhiker is Skylar's persona, based on the urban legend that you can read to the left, which I did on purpose because, again, Skylar is very aimless. She wants her story to be told, but she's also very aimless in actually bringing it about, and so she feels like she's basically just at the whim of happenstance. Like, whoever, like, drives by her road, she'll interact with, and then she'll disappear into the night, because ultimately she feels like her life isn't her own. And so ultimately her design, and I'm not an artist if you can't tell, but her design is ultimately based on the idea of the Hitchhiker being someone who died after being murdered after prom, because I really think that's an interesting idea. So you can see her high heels, her dress is broken, all that kind of thing. And basically, in terms of combat, she is and I really like the persona design philosophy that a lot of the games don't do anymore. And honestly, the original games didn't do that well either, but the face is never, like, seen explicitly speaking or anything like that. And she has a very scorched body because she's weak to fire. Because generally, again, as I've said, Skylar is pretty bad at being very active. And again, she kind of just like breezes around, and statistically she's similar to Makoto, but with a bit more like stat control. And like, generally, this is a fan fiction, my characters are kind of overpowered, so you know, you can see their skill sets there. And yeah, and I'm using the Persona 5 system specifically because I really like the damage types that are in that game. And yeah, and this is the prime form. So you can see, and I also made it so that their affinities change, kind of like in Persona 4 Golden, because I really like the party members, but also the party members don't have weaknesses when they have their ultimate personas, because I really like the symbolism of not having a weakness anymore, not just learning, like, evade fire, for example, which I don't hate either, I just prefer not having weaknesses. And so Skylar ends up resisting Psychic, because she becomes a more confident and active person. And so you can see Hitchhiker Prime, she doesn't look as cool without the torn dress or anything, but, you know, her high heels are more stable. They can actually support her now. Her dress is full. She is ready to go back to prom and really, like, reestablish herself, and so on. And her ultimate persona is Bale. Every initial persona is based on an urban legend. Every ultimate persona is a demon from the Ars Goetia, which basically fits that whole, like, solitude angle. Like, urban legends are generally encountered and spoken about in small groups, and they generally affect, like, individual people at a time. Not many people know about them, just like if you don't put yourself out there, not many people are going to know about you. Meanwhile, demons embrace what they are. There are some demons, even in the Ars Goetia, who want to, like, return to the light of heaven one day, but the vast majority of them, in the Ars Goetia and in similar grimoires or books or not, they know what they are, they've embraced their power, they know not everybody is going to like or be there for them or anything like that, but they're there for them, and that's what's important. And Skylar's is very important, considering her ultimate persona is a king from the Ars Goetia, and specifically the demonized version of the god Baal, who is also known as Hadad, who is the second to last god of the story. And there you go. And so you can see she also starts to resist fire. A lot of the characters end up resisting what they were initially weak to. And yeah, there you go. And so now on to Ishir's persona. Now this one is very unique. Okay, so as you can see, the urban legend there, not many people know about it. But yeah, and basically my goal for this design is to make him look like this weary but ultimately prepared and confident traveler. His face is supposed to look like, or head rather, is supposed to look like a map marker, but kind of like altered. So, you know, it's like there's not just like one arrow, and it's not just pointing in one direction. It's kind of all over the place. Hence, he uses nuclear because he tries to be very, like, ordered and structured and everything, and nuclear is able to change. But at the end of the day, like, nuclear is an energy that can really, like, drive things forward, and it's also, like, very consistently reliable if you know what you're doing with that kind of thing. And he's weak to wind because he doesn't like not having, like, a clear goal. He kind of doesn't like just pushing things onto other people. That's kind of how he sees not being a people pleaser, that kind of thing. Even though when he experiences that kind of thing from other people, he doesn't view it that way. And yeah, so Torrid Prime ultimately looks much different. And statistically speaking, if you can't tell, he's very much like a physical... He's the tank of the party, and also like the main gun damage dealer. And Taunting Aura, by the way, that is actually a skill in Persona 5. It draws aggro, but none of the party members learn it for some reason. And he ends up resisting gun and resisting physical. There is precedent for that in the modern games. Kanji in Persona 4 has a persona who resists physical. Aegis also exists. There you go. But yeah, so, and also his design here is supposed to change to look more weathered. And also, I looked up a Torrid flag, just in case someone named it, or made it based on the urban legend, and these primary colors were parts of the Torrid flag, from what I remember. I think there were multiple versions, but this is supposed to represent more that, like, he's found himself, or he's, like, starting to, and he's really coming into his own. And now we have Allosair, who is a duke. All of the party members other than Skylar have dukes from the Ars Goetia. And now he resists all physical attacks, he resists his weakness now, and as you can see, he's a much more worldly and prepared traveler, and so on. And yeah, and I didn't really talk about what my goal for Ball's design was, but you know, it's basically like, she's very prepared, she's very proper, she's like a queen, she's coming to her own, she's a leader, blah, blah, blah. And the same is true for, like, you know, to a lesser extent, obviously, the same is true for Ashir. He's much more, like, worldly. He thinks that, like, not only can he take everybody, like, on, in the sense that, like, taking on burdens for your friends is a completely normal thing, but he trusts that his other friends are able to, too. And that's also, like, part of the reason why he's geared up. Like, he's not able to just provide for himself with all that room, but for other people, and he's able to do it with them, hence why he's going to travel with them. So there you go. And so now we have Ana Maria Rivera. Rivera because she uses ice, and Ana Maria because the Weeping Woman, or La Llorona, is said to be a woman named Maria in some versions. But I kind of felt like just naming her Maria straight up was kind of stupid and overused. So yeah, and basically, she is the main magic damage dealer, but she also gets a Mudo, because some of the party members are based on some of Nemisa's potential skill sets, and Nemissa can have ice and Mudo, so there you go. She also gets debilitate, and she's really broken, if I'm being honest. But basically my goal for her was to make her look like very shy, withdrawn, and, you know, like she just like spent the entire night like drowning herself in her tears, hence Weeping Woman. And now her prime version is her, like, on her wedding day. Like, basically, when she was the happiest, or at least, like, she's trying to remember when she was the happiest, hence why she still has a drowned complexion, and she's still, like, hiding herself and everything. Basically, yeah, there are, like, a lot of different interpretations for La Llorona. There are a lot of different, like, similar urban legends from around the world, but they basically all go back to her being a wife who was treated wrong, or at least, like, thought that she was, and that kind of fits with, Ana Maria's, like, not persecution complex, but, like, her specific way of, like, being shy, kind of being, like, taking things personally. And yet, like, she still has her friends who, like, do treat her right, but she's also worried that they won't. And yeah, there you go. And so her ultimate persona ends up not resisting light, which was her weakness, but resisting nuclear, so that she could be more like Ashir, because she wants to be a much more reliable and consistent person. So there you go. But she's not really ready for the spotlight yet, you know what I mean? And so I know this design is kind of confusing. Basically, my goal was that, like, Barbatos's head is basically like a collection of banners, and when he moves through the air, it's kind of like he's swimming, and, like, the four banners kind of, like, they represent that there are, like, a lot of different ways that Ana Maria can present herself, but now she's much more confident to, like, go with all of them instead of just, like, acting as though there's only one way that she can be, or anything like that. And he also has the form of a very, like, crystalline, golden, like, statue, if you're actually able to, like, see his body. Though obviously, like, Barbatos is the persona of a woman, So, like, he would still have a feminine form and everything. But the Goetic demons all use, like, he, him. So, there you go. And, yeah, that's basically... And I feel like the form would also, like, resemble Anna Maria, so she would be, like a bigger, but still, like, you know, a beautiful, like, statue that could be, like, on display, but with the head of a bunch of banners to signify Anna Maria's character development. So there you go. And now Chris's personas, remember, he's the navigator, so his are very unique. As you can see, basically how I imagine this is when Chris summons his persona, he has a halo above him, and these dots are basically, like, in Dungeons and Dragons, they're like the scrying sensors. Basically, these, like, each dot is an eye that senses the world around him in a bunch of different ways, right? So you're actually viewing his persona from the front right now. He's neutral to everything, as you can imagine. There's not much really to go over statistically speaking, but they're Dark Watchers. They observe. That's what his persona is based on. And it also fits with him being, like, more standoffish when it comes to his art before his character development. Now, his prime persona has much more to it. Like, he can view much more. He can view much more effectively. And the halo is also, like, I imagine it kind of like twisting in and out of reality, like in and out of, like, spirit and ether. And he is immune to almighty damage because he's a navigator. I think they should play around with their affinities because it's not like they ever see battle. Yeah. And his ultimate persona is a void. So it also is immune to physical attacks. I kind of drew inspiration from Risei's prime persona here as well with the planetary system. But basically, instead of it being a halo, when Chris summons his ultimate persona, Celios, he actually disappears into the void. Like, you see his ultimate persona for a split second, and the void overtakes him, and he's still in, like, the same layer of reality, but he's in a layer within a layer. You know what I mean? So he doesn't even need to be protected anymore. Like, shadows can't touch him, basically, because he's just that defiant of, like, his observance of other people being, like, withheld or interrupted in any way. Like, he's always going to be finding inspiration. He's always going to be analyzing the world around him. Like, he hopes the people who consume his art will themselves. And that's really all there is to it. And so, Drake, for Drake we have Krampus, and Drake is basically the main healer. And he also uses Agi and Hama, very similar to Yukiko, but she uses Mudo. Yeah, that's really all to say statistically speaking. He uses fire because Drake is very bold. And I didn't say, like, Anna Maria obviously uses ice because, you know, she's more withdrawn, and she can come off as cold, but she's really just shy. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier. And she also gains a resistance to... I already said that. Okay, never mind, sorry. But yeah, Krampus looks very bruised and battered because Drake is in a contact sport that is infamous for its injuries and stuff like that, and it's also not something he wants to be, hence why he kind of looks like a prisoner as well, like he's not getting the adequate care that he needs. But also the horns at the very top of his head are supposed to resemble the stitches that footballs are given. American footballs, that is, if you can't tell. So yeah. And then his prime persona resembles a... basically a more, like, powerful version of Krampus. Right, so he's still, like, bruised and battered, but he's getting better. He still has his tusks. He has, like, better equipment now. He's not as bruised. He's on his road to recovery, and his very top horns have straightened out, so he's also able to, like, detect and navigate the world more effectively. Or I guess, like, his antlers or antenna, I guess you could say. And his ultimate persona, this is my favorite design, something that we're going to get to later, focuses on this. And as you can see, like, all of the ultimate personas incorporate gold into their designs. I forgot if I mentioned that. But his are gloves because he's finally actively taking control and he's really, like, fiery and engaged and everything. Eligor is noted to ride a horse, as I'm sure all SMT fans know. Hence, that's why his boots, or his legs, I should say, are actually hooves. And yeah, he just looks like a classical hero because Drake is very stereotypical, like, you know, he's a footballer, but he actually wants to write, and his, like, family is getting in the way. So I felt like a very, like, heroic, chivalrous design, very much fit. And then you have the whole justice is blind type of thing, with his with the bandana around his knight's helmet. I really, really love this fucking design. I think I did an amazing job, and I made these like years ago too. And he also starts to resist electric, because I associate electricity with being very active and sociable specifically. And now that he can finally do what he wants to, he can also be who he wants to much more easily. So he's very active. Like light, fire, electric, that's his thing, right? Like all of those things he has good affinities with. And now we have some of the more unique personas again, with Taylor's persona. Now, Taylor is basically Chie and Naoto, as I said before. She is the main physical damage dealer, but she also has light and darkness attacks. She doesn't have Hama or Mudo. That's what the previous two characters have. And she doesn't have like the typical buff, she just has the critical rate boosts. And the thing is, she resists light and darkness, but she's also weak to psychic. And if you've been paying attention to the symbols, her symbol for her weakness is a bit different. And that is because, unlike most weaknesses in Persona where you take 25% more damage, because she has 2 resistances, she takes 50% more. So you really don't want her to be hit by psychic damage. And the reason why she's weak to psychic specifically is because, and I know I didn't go over their weaknesses, but I feel like they're pretty obvious so far. Or like all the ones that I haven't gone over, it's pretty obvious. But she's weak to psychic because she... like, she's a very confident person, and she knows, like, what she wants and everything, but, like, when she gets in her own head, it can be really bad, and she kind of does lose sight of what happens, hence her social link. So, you know, she's generally confident, but that's not all I feel like having a good mind or, like, psychic resistance means or anything. And so, as you can see, she doesn't gain a second weakness from her prime, or a second resistance from her prime persona. Instead, the 2 that she already has simply power up. And I've been told her ultimate persona has Hollow Knight vibes. Hence why, or, I mean, that's not why, but, like, you know, if you've played Hollow Knight, maybe this is similar to that. And obviously her personas all are intentionally, like, they intentionally look more macabre and kind of like they can drain things from people, because ultimately that's what's going on. Also, the bottom spike is supposed to be like a point, but I guess it got cut off by the end of this presentation, so that's really awkward. But yeah, there are 3 spikes at the bottom of Murmur. And Murmur is also supposed to be pretty big. Like, I know, like, all of her personas can look, like, pretty small, but they're, like, big bat monsters, basically. That's my intention. I think I did a good job at incorporating light and darkness. Like, this is kind of like a ribcage, but it can also be played like an instrument. Like, whenever she casts Rebellion or Charge or, like, another status skill, like, Murmur kind of, like, flutters his wings and kind of, like, plays the, like, string instrument of his, like, exposed ribcage, but it sounds like a trumpet, hence his association with the demon. And she's also the only party member to gain repel affinities, as you can see in the corner there. And so Polybius, one of my favorite urban legends, is Izumi's. So Izumi is weak to ice in spite of being, you know, very introverted and everything. But the reason why is because Izumi doesn't ever give the cold shoulder or anything like that. And actually, they are terrified of coming off as rude or anything like that, and like putting themselves forward and taking up space and stuff like that. So I think being weak to ice makes the most sense there. And then they are very good with electric, which I know I said I associate with sociability and everything, but that's because Izumi very much wants to be more social and actually loves getting to know new people. They just don't really do it. Hence their association with the urban legend. And I know I'm like flip-flopping in like what I'm saying or like the associations that I'm making and everything. But I feel like the associations with the characters are pretty obvious. But like, you know, Polybius is a game, it's like stationary. Like, you know, Izumi doesn't really put that much effort into meeting new people or anything, but when someone interacts with them, or like when someone plays Polybius, they have a good time. And Izumi statistically is like the second best magic damage dealer, but they're the best, ailment dealer. And they also get the reflecting skills and Sukukaja and some limited healing and Ollie Dance, which is really, really nice. And they ultimately end up resisting force because just like Skylar, they're kind of like passive, they kind of just let things happen, but, you know, gradually as they develop, they also take command of life and simply use circumstance as suggestions. And this ultimate persona is supposed to look more confident, or this prime persona form of Polybius is supposed to look more confident, hence you can see like the check marks and everything. And I imagine Polybius looking like very erratic in terms of like shape and size and everything, and like they have like a lot of particle effects emanating off of them at all times. And the ultimate persona looks absolutely crazy, and I know that. But basically, Valifar is supposed to look like kind of like a Decarabia or Kaiwan, basically, but again, you're viewing it from the front, or you're viewing him from the front. So I imagine him like moving kind of like all over the place, like up and down, left and right, but like generally spinning on the axis that you're seeing here, kind of like how a clock would go back and forth. And those golden parts in the center, the spheres, those are eyes. So Valifar would also blink all of the big eyes at the same time and all of the oval-shaped smaller eyes at the same time, like alternating so that their eyes are always open, so that they can always be on the lookout. And the bright magenta, those are wings that aren't really used to keep afloat because they can just float, but every once in a while, like when they cast a spell, for example, they'll flap those magenta wings all at the same time. I know this is like very what am I looking at, but again, that's intentional because a lot of people don't know the truth about Izumi until they actually get to know them. And now we have finally Daniel's personas. This is basically based on the Men in Black. Daniel, statistically speaking, is very similar to Haru, actually. He learns a lot of Gun and Psychic, but also Almighty. And yeah. And basically, and Daniel also has good, like, HP, hence the Regenerate skill, as you can see. And Daniel is resistant to Psychic because, again, like, he's very confident and actually does have good control of himself, but he is weak to nuclear, and so he's the only character to actually be weak to his opposite element. But he's weak to nuclear because he is very, again, like he's organized, but he's also like worried about about things changing too quickly and like being too efficient because it means losing what currently exists, which very clearly contrasts with why Ishir is someone who excels in nuclear. And so this is supposed to look, and all of Daniel's personas are supposed to look extremely similar to Skylar's, because I kind of considered Daniel and Skylar like being in a romantic relationship. I kind of wanted like the Arsene Vanadis thing going on, like Joker and Kasumi in Persona 5 Royal. But I also feel like, you know, they're the first and last party member respectively. Then they actually do have pretty similar like flaws and development. Like Skylar is very aimless, and yet she like fully embraces like everything that's going on with her. It was mainly just her like establishing herself that was difficult. Meanwhile, with Daniel, it's about keeping himself established that's difficult, and he doesn't want to just go with the flow. He wants to keep things the same. So I think having their personas look similar to basically emulate the fact that even though they're very different issues, they're ultimately the same and based on the same things. Hence, his personas are basically more modern, and yet also or actually, no, they share the same time periods, but again, like his are just more masculine for the most part. And so his ultimate persona ends up resisting fire, which Skylar is weak to, because he like is more bold as he develops, and he does try to be a much more like forward-thinking, conscientious person. In spite of the fact that like he is also like kind of in the middle between how active and passive he is, but he's trying to do better, and he's also very good friends with Drake. Hence that association as well. And his ultimate persona is very clearly straight up just a masculine version of Skylar's ultimate persona. And he also gains a resistance to Almighty, because that's awesome. And so that's really all there is to that. But as a bonus for making it this far, I decided to make my own personas. That's something I've been thinking of. Like, I have made my own personas, like, statistically and everything for a while, and I have had art and stuff like that, but for the longest time, I've just felt like my personas were different, at least a little bit. So, like, literally a few hours before I got this presentation together, I, like, finalized the identities and the bios and the skills and everything of my personas, and I actually made art. So all the art that you're about to see is actually modern. Some of the proportions are still weird and everything, but again, I'm not an artist. I'm just someone who likes to draw a little bit in Photoshop sometimes. So my initial persona, he looks so fucking good. Oh my god. Okay, so first of all, I think my tarot card would be Justice, or Judgment, sorry. The reason why is because it's not really a card that you can fit your personality around, or like vice versa or anything. Or it's not like a card that you can have be based on someone's personality, I should say. Like, a lot of the tarot cards are, but the reason why I see myself in Judgment is because I feel like it fits my life philosophy the most. Because, like, as I've said, Judgment is about, it's the climax of the Fool's journey. It's where he has to make an ultimate decision, and it's a decision that everything that he has done before that point has led up to. Like, the only reason he's able to make the decision now is because of decisions he's made in the future, because of what other people have done to him, what he's let happen to him, and so on, and so on, and so on. And it's going to simply lead to another judgment in his next Fool's journey. And that cycle is only going to stop when he's dead, because everybody is a work in progress. And ultimately speaking, if you're going to change, you should try to change for the better. And yeah, I don't fuck with people who do not have growth mindsets, or who apologize for things and then just keep doing them, who don't, like, always try to, like, you know, obviously, like, taking long breaks and stuff like that is fine and stuff like that, but, like, just putting things off constantly, just, like, taking the easy way out, not trying to improve as a person. Like, I just don't fuck with any of that shit at all, and I absolutely, like, hate doing it. It's why I can never put things off. It's why I always have to have a creative outlet, and so I just really see myself in the Judgment card. And if I were going off of my personality specifically, I feel like maybe the Sun, which is funny because that's, Judgment is 20, the Sun is 19, but I also feel like I'm definitely one of those people who is not everybody's cup of tea, but I'm also very passionate. And so it's kind of like, you know, the Sun is, like, radiant and, like, nice to be around, and, like, you know, I don't want to come off as, like, a conceited asshole or anything, but the Sun is, like, it's radiant, but it can also burn you. It's not, like, something that you can have, like, all the time or anything. And yeah, and that also fits because, like, the Sun rises and sets, and I can also be, like, very withdrawn and everything, and the Sun can also represent, like, a preparation, because it comes just before Judgment in the Fool's journey, and so on. But yeah, not to be, like, too deep or whatever, but yeah. And so I feel like my skill set, like, when I play D&D, I'm basically always the main healer and, like, a good utility magic character with some attacks. But, you know, D&D doesn't, or, like, Persona doesn't really play that way. And also, in terms of my personality, I think this does make the most sense. I feel like I could learn, like, Samarikarm out of nowhere, like Robin Hood does, for example, in Persona 5. But I decided to only have, like, 8 bullet points here. So, Gun, because I love piercing attacks. Fire, because I've always loved fire, and I'm going to get into that later. Almighty, because I always love using Almighty, and non-elemental magic has always, like, really appealed to me, because it's like, what is it? I like flavoring it as ether or spirit, personally, and I associate, like, spirit with, like, dreams and stuff like that because of Persona, and there you go. I feel like going off of Persona 5, my status ailment would be Confuse. If I had to choose, like, one status ailment from anything, it would be Illusion or Mirage, as SMT5 calls it. But again, I'm using Persona 5 system. Dikaja and Tarukaja, I feel like, fit me pretty well because, like, I'm just, like, shut up, like, a lot of the time. And, like, I tend to be, like, I don't really, like, get my quiet friends, like, out of their shell, like, as much as other people do, but I feel like as much as an introvert can, I do that. And it's like, Tarukaja just also gives someone who is very passionate about things. And with Dikaja and Fortify Spirit, actually, I feel like, you know, when I'm upset by something, it lives in my head rent-free, which is, like, obviously not great, but it generally, like, it still takes a bit to upset me, and also, like, there are a lot of things that I don't care about as much as, like, other people do, and I just feel like that fits Fortify Spirit, because it doesn't help you recover from ailments faster, it just makes you less likely to be affected by them, and Dikaja is very much just shutting people down, which is something I'm good at, and Concentrate obviously just makes your magic better, and I feel like statistically I would be very balanced, which I know is, like, everybody's least favorite thing in the Persona series and SMT games as a whole. But I actually love doing balanced builds. Like in SMT5, for example, it's some of the most fun I have playing those games. So yeah, I don't care. I feel like I'd be very balanced, but in order from most to least, my stats would go from magic, strength, endurance or vitality, and then agility, which would be completely average, and then, like, luck or grace, as I like to flavor it, like how graceful you are and like how attuned to magic you are and stuff like that, that would be like noticeably below average, but because all of the other stats are only a little bit above average, it's not that bad. And also, like, every SMT character has a low luck stat, because it's, like, everybody's least favored, and Izumi is, like, the only exception to that, because they're the status ailment person. And yeah, so Furcus is... I love the Ars Goetia. I had, like, a big... I mean, if you can't tell, I had, like, a really big demonology and, like, occult phase in high school in general that genuinely, like, really opened up so many horizons for me. Like, I owe, like, a lot of the stories that I wrote and, like, the characters and everything... to them, and I feel like Furcus fits me the most. I used to think that was Shax, because I really love Shax, and I do see myself in, like, his descriptions as much as you can see yourself in, like, a weird-ass description of a demon. And Shax was also partially what my first D&D character was based on, and I know I'm just doing my life story. That's why I saved this for the end of this video. You can click off if you don't want Pistoria's lore, or Pastoria's lore, but whatever. Yeah, so... And Shax is also the name of my first D&D character, if I didn't say that already. But, you know, like, he's just, like, he's his own thing now, you know? And Furcus, for example, is just a demon who I don't know, I actually, like, really do see myself in a way that, like, I just didn't with Shax. So he's the sole knight from the Ars Goetia. He's considered a great president in other books, specifically the Infernal Dictionary and the False Monarchy of Demons. Those are the English versions of those books. So it's kind of weird that he has, like, an inconsistent title, which is kind of funny. I didn't list it here for the sake of brevity. But yeah, like, being the sole knight is cool, because it's, like, on the bottom, but he's still, like, going toe-to-toe with other people. Like, I don't see myself as someone who is, like, in need of a lot of help or anything like that, but I don't know. It's, like... It's cool. Like, the whole, like, rank thing isn't really part of it. I just thought it was, like, nice to mention. He rides a pale horse and is a powerful man, or looks like a powerful man with white hair, a large beard, and a sharp weapon, likely a pitchfork, because his name, Furcus, probably derives from the word, the Latin word for forked, or just fork, or the Greek word for tomb, or something like that. Like, he is depicted classically wielding just a normal spear, but, yeah, whatever. And despite his description as a cruel demon, few of his abilities can be harmful. He can teach pyromancy and can turn humans invisible, but he knows much more about science and communication. And I really like this description, and, like, I just kind of resonated with it, because, like, first of all, I'm 24. My hair has started to go gray when I was, like, 18, and it's still, like, barely white at all. But I honestly really love that. I wish that it were, like, way more gray than it actually is now. I've, like, considered dyeing my hair, but I would just look like an anime character if I did that already. I'm not a powerful guy. Like, I'm tall, but whatever. Also, no facial hair in sight, but I like those traits, so I don't really care. That doesn't really matter. But, yeah, like, whatever. This is kind of embarrassing. Whatever. I like demons. I like weapons. I like stuff like that. Not in, like, a red flaggy, like, alt-righty way, but... Yeah, whatever. I shouldn't upload this video, but whatever. But yeah, and I also have been seen, like, I'm definitely one of those people who has a very, like, I wouldn't call it resting bitch voice, but, you know, I have one of those voices that makes me sound, like, annoyed or upset at all times, and, like, also given my, like, general, like, demeanor, like, I'm extremely unexpressive and quiet when talking to people, and I'm not charismatic when I'm, like, getting to know people whatsoever. So I usually develop a reputation as someone who is, like, intimidating or kind of rude. And to be fair, yeah, in high school especially, I was, like, genuinely, like, pretty shitty to people for no real reason. And I know that's, like, every teenager, but that doesn't make it right, you know what I mean? And, yeah. Like, in college, I feel like that also, like, very much was not the case too much, because, like, I did have, like, random people come up to me a lot and just, like, start conversations and, like, ask to work with me and stuff in college, even though, like, I wasn't even popular. But, you know, again, that's just, like, part of the growth mindset, and I'm still, like, misinterpreted a lot of the time. And Furcus also is said to, like, teach pyromancy. I've always loved fire, because... I'll get to that in, like, 2 seconds. Turn humans invisible. Again, like, I'm very quiet. I think that fits me. Knows much of science and communication. I think that fits because you're watching this YouTube video, and also because, like, again, like, I'm someone who can't... I can't get into something a little bit. Like, if I'm a fan of something, I have to know, like, everything about it. I have to read the wiki. I have to, like, look at the spin-offs at the very least. You know what I mean? Like, look at this essay and tell me I don't like Persona that much, actually, or I don't care to know that much about it. And I don't even like half of the Persona games, and I'm doing this, but I'm emotionally invested in it. And anyway, so the reason why I've always liked Fire Magic so much is because of the game Wizard 101, which I'm sure if you're watching this video you've heard of, maybe even played and probably fell off of it. But Wizard 101 means so much to me. Basically, in that game, you take a personality test at the very beginning, or at least you can, but like basically every kid does, because why not? And basically what happens is you get assigned one of 7 schools, and I got Fire. It's very common for people to get Fire, and I know how the test works. Basically, every single answer that you choose determines which answers you can pick from for the very last question. And it is possible to unlock them all, but basically the last question is what gemstone you are, and the one that you pick is the one that determines your ultimate result. And the only exception is if you only pick answers that are assigned to one school, in which case it won't ask you what your favorite gemstone is because you'd only have one response anyway. But I chose Ruby, which got me Fire, which is basically just because I like the color red. But yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. But yeah, like, I really like Fire. I think it also fits me a lot because, again, like, I'm passionate. I'm like, you know, Fire, not everyone's thing. But yeah, so I just really like that, and Furcus is explicitly about fire and everything. So basically with his design, first of all, the seal of Furcus is his belt buckle there. That's why it's so weirdly elaborate. He has, like, the beard covering his face, and he also has, like, a completely white face. And it is covered, and his eyes are covered by a knight's visor, basically, that is, like, poking out. And basically, yeah, like, the beard, it's, like, yeah, it's covering his entire face, and it's also, like, going down, basically forming this, like, small cape of hair behind him, which is, like, kind of crazy, but I like it. And specifically, and he also, just like Eligor has earlier, since he is noted as riding a horse, his legs are actually horse hooves. And he looks very confident. He's assuming a power pose because I love power poses and you should too. And the specific outfit that he's wearing is the outfit that a group of mice wear in one spell in Wizard 101. Basically, there's a spell called Fire from Above that used to be my favorite spell in the game before they nerfed it and the meta changed and better spells came out and everything. But basically, I always really loved the outfits that they wear. And so, like, whenever I think of, like, really awesome outfits in fiction, I think of that one. And so I have Furcus wearing that outfit. And it's not actually obtainable in the game itself, which really upsets me. But yeah, there you go. And he's supposed to be, like, holding his belt in, like, a confident way and everything. And yeah, I don't know how much it fits me, but basically, the shoulder buckles, or whatever they're called, have XX, which is a reference to the Judgment Tarot card. The actual, like, golden slits that you can see that are, like, running along the jacket have symbols in them in-game, but I didn't want to make, like, this design too elaborate or anything. Yeah, but I think it fits me because I do really like looking professional, and I feel like it has a very good mix of formal and casual, and I'm someone who really, like, I try to be casual, like, basically whenever I can, not because I'm afraid of being serious, because I'm not, but because, like, I just don't really care. Like, I have a very distinct memory in college. I, like, answered one of the professor's questions about this author who we were reading. I don't remember her name, I'm sorry. But I referred to her with her first name, when, like, everybody else in the class was, like, you know, just using her full name or only using her last name or whatever, and the professor was distinctly like, oh, I really like that you use her first name, by the way, because they say that, like, you're really able to get into the minds of authors when you refer to them in such a casual way. And I don't know, it just really resonated with me, and it just made me realize something about myself that, like, has always been the case. But I don't know, I just feel like you're really able to connect with people more when you kind of, like, you don't ignore professional boundaries or anything like that, but you just, like, level with people. Like, there's this, like, in high school, there was a teacher who, like, everybody was intimidated by, and I like, became kind of infamous for, like, messing with him and, like, developing, like, a sarcastic, like, rapport with him and everything, and, like, everybody was really impressed by that. And I didn't really realize until later, but that's, like, kind of a skill that I have when I'm able to, like, let people in, which is also something that I kind of struggle with. And so, again, like, I think that this And I still also have like a very strong sense of like doing the right thing and professionalism when I think it like does actually matter and when boundaries need to be established. And I think like this mix of something like kind of casual but also kind of like fitting for wartime very much fits both Furcus and myself. And his prime persona, or his prime form, is not that crazy. I really just like inverted the reds for the inside and the outside. And I also made it so that his beard is a little bit longer and his hair in the back is a lot longer. So it's like a full-size cape. And yeah, that's really it for that. And I also start to... Oh yeah, so for the resistances, resist fire, weak to ice. I used to think light made sense for a weakness of mine, but I feel like that doesn't really fit anymore. Ice is something kind of similar to why Izumi is weak to it. I don't like being seen as a complete asshole. Or like giving people the cold shoulder. Like if I could just not be shy magically, which is something I've gotten a lot better at, yes, but if I could just not be shy, I don't like that part of myself. Obviously, who does? But, I just wish that I could be like better and like more charismatic, like more consistently speaking, but that's something that's like always been very difficult for me to work on. Like I was a tutor in college and I never was able to develop that like, hey, so what's up, kind of thing, which is not something everybody should be good at doing, even if they are a tutor. And I was very cognizant of that the entire time. Like some people don't like that kind of thing. I just wish that I could do it. You know what I mean? So I think ice makes the most sense as a weakness. And then there is psychic as my second resistance, which I don't think I need to elaborate on because you're hearing me talk throughout this entire video and I'm putting myself out there, which requires a confident person to do, and it's not conceited to recognize that, and I recognize that. And here we are, my ultimate persona. I couldn't draw the arms very well, I know, and also like his proportions are kind of weird. I'm kind of embarrassed by this one, but yeah, whatever. And there actually is like a much better version of this design because I actually had a friend of mine draw this like years ago, and he is like a very professional artist who like used to work like part-time for it, basically like when he was like a teenager, like a young teenager, like making hella money, not hella money, but like, good commission money. And he drew my ultimate persona, which has been the exact same this entire time. But I wanted to fit it with my art style, hence the drawing here. And yeah, and basically his pose, he has like one of his arms behind himself and one arm on his chest because I really fuck with that pose for some reason. Also like Toshiro from Persona 5 Tactica, when he summons his persona, he puts one of his hands on his chest, and that always like, it just stuck with me as like really powerful imagery, and I really love that game, so I wanted to honor it. Basically with this design, also resist almighty. Word. Basically, okay, so the Divine Paradox, first of all. The Divine Paradox is a form that the Wizard 101 protagonist takes at the end of the third story arc of the game, and it leads in, and it's directly, like, them assuming that form is directly the reason why the fourth arc of the game takes place. I'm not going to get into it, though. The Divine Paradox does use he, him pronouns in the bio, just so it's simpler, because, not because, like, they, them is complicated, but because if I did use they, them, which would be more lore accurate, like, I would have to rewrite things to be, like, as not like repetitive or confusing as possible for the bio, and I'm a guy and I play as guy characters mostly in that game, so yeah. But yeah, basically also he's wearing a priest outfit, specifically a priest outfit that is in The Sims 3, which is also another game that I really like, so it's me like honoring that. He uses like a very dark red colors because I love that, and he's wearing sneakers with like white on the bottom, which is also like another nod to like wearing a very professional outfit but still like having a layer of casualness. He's surrounded by, like, these are supposed to be like wings, but they could also be like eyes, like secondary eyes or whatever. Like I imagine when he casts a spell, it's kind of like Typhlosion in Pokemon, where he gets like way more like radiant around him and everything. But the reason why, and the mask is also very lore accurate to the actual Divine Paradox in Wizard 101, just look it up if you're curious. But the reason why I had him in a priest outfit, not just to like reference and honor The Sims 3, which means a lot to me, is because I just tend to be someone who, like, I like to imagine myself as someone who like has a good head on his shoulders and is kind of like a leader, but who is also still some, like, I can still like absolutely like fuck up, and I like when there are like scandals in the church and stuff like that. And I was also raised Catholic, kind of, so it's just like interesting. I don't know. It's like a corruptible, like mistake making person who like is generally pretty consistent in terms of how they act and who people like look to. And a lot of my friends are very like affectionate toward each other and myself, and yeah, I'm just like very confident. I don't know if I'd have my ultimate persona in real life if I were a persona user. I think that's like a cringe thing to even imagine for like a billion fucking reasons. But, you know, I like to think that I am capable of a lot, and I know for a fact that I have inspired people, and I think inspiring people is the best thing you can do, and I think that that is very fitting of like a priest outfit and that kind of thing. And also the Divine Paradox would obviously float all the time, but I didn't want to draw that because I am not that great of an artist. And yeah, and also one last thing, all of the personas that I drew are supposed to have proportions that are more in line with Persona 2, where personas are only a bit bigger and taller than their summoners for the most part. Because I do love a lot of modern persona designs, of the modern persona designs and their philosophies and everything. But I also feel like when they get to be like 2 times larger than their summoners, it kind of loses the magic of Persona. When at the end of the day, I love the Persona 2 design philosophy of ultimately just making humans who are cosplaying for the most part. Obviously, there are some exceptions to that, like just look at my Valifor and Polybius designs. But yeah, it's obviously nice to have changes of pace and weird designs. And yeah, so I hope you like this presentation. Thank you very much for watching, and I will be surprised if one fucking person who does not know me personally gets to the end of this video. So, yeah, good for you. Thanks.